Okay. So, well past when it was relevant and was in the zeitgeist or anybody cared, I have now started watching Watchmen, the TV series on HBO. I think initially I kind of put it off out of skepticism, and then even when I heard it was good, I continued to put it off because it sounded really heavy, and I wasn't in a place where I was really ready to deal with that. It's the same reason I still haven't watched BoJack Horseman yet. But I have started to watch Watchmen. Who watches The Watchmen? Me! God, that was terrible. But I thought when I started that I'd do some kind of season overview of the whole thing. But by the time the episode was done, I realized I can't. It's too dense. If I'm going to talk about this thing, I need to either see the whole thing and then go back over it with a fine-tooth comb and do a really massive dissection video essay type thing that probably no one will watch because I needed to have made it 3 months ago at the latest for anybody to care. Or I need to talk one episode at a time because there's enough in any given episode, if the first one is any indication, that I'm going to have to unpack this in small bites. I'm opting for the latter, as you probably already guessed. Again, I can't imagine that the market for my opinions on a show that is already wrapped up and been dissected is something people much care about, but I've seen it and I need to talk about it. So whether or not people are listening, So, where do we start? Well, it is a follow-up. It's not a direct adaptation. Smart. Not a sequel to the Zack Snyder film, which is good. I'm going to have to talk about that one on the Council of Geeks channel next month. Ugh. I say I have to. I've kind of been looking forward to it for a while. But anyway, other thing. So, again, smart move for that. And it is deep and it is dense. And that's honestly incredibly reflective of the comic. If you've read Watchmen, any given issue is so packed with stuff that you kind of have to pause between issues just to digest it all. And this has the same level of stuff packed into it, but not in a superfluous, every frame crammed with imagery kind of way. No, it's just so dense with symbolism and thematic relevance and layers. There are so many layers to think. So, okay. So it's set roughly in the present, but not our present. The present coming on from the world of Watchmen, meaning that there was I forget how many years worth of presidency of Richard Nixon, and then there was apparently President Redford, who was there for 30 years, and I didn't pick up if he's still the president currently at the time. I think he is at the time the thing's set, but it's also not dealing with super huge scale. It's dealing on a smaller scale as we follow a character who is a cop, and not some sort of special forces. She's just a cop, but what it means to be a cop in this world is vastly different from what it means to be a cop in our world. And I feel like a lot of thought was put into how to do this and have it work. And it shows, because I don't even know if I can describe this properly. There's going to be spoilers, you should know that. But I'm not entirely sure that I'm going to be able to do it justice trying to explain it. But for starters, the cops wear masks now to hide their identities. And if you follow real world events, that sentence probably makes you go, oh, makes you very uncomfortable. And it should. But there's also flip sides to that. They've got a hell of a lot more restrictions than they've got in the real world. They have to ask for the consent of anyone they've, say, pulled over for a traffic stop before they can start recording with the body camera. They have to call in and get clearance to have their weapon unlocked. Otherwise, they don't have a sidearm. They don't have a gun on their hip. So the entire dynamic is completely different. And we find out a little bit into this that the reason cops wear masks is because cops got hunted down because people knew who they were and went after them. And in a world that already had masked vigilantes and superheroes, and if those superheroes are now effectively gone and the cops are the closest thing in their place, they had to deal with the things those masked heroes used to. Those masked heroes couldn't be followed home. Well, the cops needed that level of protection. It's really nicely done to make it layered and make it complicated and not 100% clear what you should be comfortable with, and coming to the early tentative conclusion that maybe you're not supposed to be comfortable with any of it. Because you watch a cop, a black cop, get gunned down because he doesn't get permission to pull his weapon fast enough. It doesn't get unlocked soon enough, and he gets gunned down. The main character that we follow is also black. Is a black cop who has been shot before. And I don't think that is coincidental. I think that's very deliberate. Because if you're going to put even though this is not a world where it's safe to assume that Black Lives Matter movement has happened in this fictional universe, the people who made this, like Damon Lindelof was the showrunner, but I have looked into this. He was very, very smart about how he filled out his writer's room and how diverse he got for the people who were going to be working with him and supporting him for this. But they clearly all put a lot of thought into this and understood that even though in this fictional world, they don't have to deal with the idea that Black Lives Matter was a thing in universe, but they're going to be releasing the show into a world that Black Lives Matter is a thing that exists. And giving it this complicated layer where the cops are, the first cop we see and the primary character are both black, and they are taking on white supremacists who have co-opted Rorschach's thing. Which, first off, yes, because if there's one thing that like a lot of people took away the wrong message from Watchmen, it's that Rorschach is cool. Thinking Rorschach is cool is the same as thinking Tyler Durden was cool in Fight Club. Yes, he's presented in a way that, like, there's some cool elements to him, but this is a terrible person. Like, that's core to who they are. So you're not supposed to want to be them. So props to the show for taking that iconography and applying it in a way that's like, here's the real life people who want to be Rorschach, and they're awful. They are hardcore white supremacist, terrible people. And it really does create a lot of conflict in your head because you're watching these cops, and again, not all the cops are black, but our window into the cops is the black characters, and they're taking on these white supremacists, but at the same time, the show does not shy away from drilling in the fact that the way these cops are behaving, this doesn't seem okay either. And that is deliberately done to make you uncomfortable. There's one of them, they wear different masks. There isn't like a standard cop mask. They all have their own kind of thing. One of them wears this mirrored mask. It's reflective. And he interrogates this guy. And it's so unsettling. It's so unnerving. Like, you feel deeply uncomfortable being in a room with this guy. And our lead character beats the hell out of a suspect to get information. And even though the other cops are prepared to look the other way, it is not presented in a triumphant manner. It is not presented in a, yeah, go, break the rules to get the job done. There is an ominousness to that scene. There is a sense of, this shouldn't be happening to it. So I'm getting a whole lot of gray, a whole lot of complexity, a whole lot of layers. There's a lot to unpack, and I've barely even talked about events in this thing. I'm just talking premise. And it opens with Tulsa, Oklahoma in the 20s and the absolute obliteration of a black neighborhood at that point in time, which is a real-life historical event, because remember that while Watchmen is not true to real-life history, the point of divergence is around World War II-ish, and it doesn't really heavily diverge until around Vietnam. Prior to that, it's pretty close to our history. So that event is depicted. And to my understanding of events, as someone who is trying to educate themselves fairly accurately, or at the very least very viscerally, this is now the second show in fairly short order that I've seen depict this. Lovecraft Country did it as well. I didn't do a review on that particular episode where it happened, but I thought Lovecraft Country did it very well too. And it's an event that definitely deserves to be better known than it is. And it's one that I'm really glad to see getting to, well, I say glad. It's not comfortable viewing, but it also shouldn't be. So, opening with that, and then jumping to a black cop who doesn't have the ability to protect himself because of the rules that are in place, but then at the same time to see these cops abuse what power they have in the ways that they're able to do so. That's a lot. And it feels very, very true to the themes and the concepts and the cynicism of the original Watchmen. And the performances are all phenomenal from everybody in this. And it's dropping a few things early on, like we get Jeremy Irons as Adrian Veidt, and we get an early indication of Dr. Manhattan. So I know they'll all come into play later, but right now they're just sort of established, like, yeah, they're around. But that's kind of it. This hooked me hard on the first episode, but I definitely had to take a breather after watching it. So I have no idea at what pace these are going to come out. I would say at once a week is it would be the most time I'd take between them. Might be every couple of days. I don't know. I'm definitely not binging this thing. It's too much. It's too dense. I couldn't process it as a binge watch. So I guess that's the one thing that I would say. If you haven't checked this show out yet, I'm going to A, recommend it, and B, don't binge it. Savor it. Which is actually, again, also true of the Watchmen comic book. My recommendation for anyone reading Watchmen is to read one issue and then not read the next one until at least 24 hours later. Because you can't burn through it. You need to marinate in it for a little bit. You need to sit with those thoughts and those images and those characters and that story. And based on first episode, same feels true about this show. Well played. Watchmen, the series, episode 1. You've seen it, what'd you think about it? Whatever your thoughts are, drop something down in the comments. Let's talk about it. And like I said, I'll probably keep doing episode reviews. I'm not actually going to guarantee that but I will do them as I take in episodes that I need to talk about. But if the first one's indicative of what the whole season's going to be like, then yeah, I'll probably do every episode. But whatever your thoughts are, leave a comment. I have a Patreon, which is how I afford HBO Max, which is how I'm able to watch this thing, and it's also how I'm able to eat. But even if you can't support me on that, liking, sharing, subscribing, all those things help. The bell, I guess, sure, why not? No pressure though, don't sweat it. We take a relaxed attitude around here. So just come on back next time you need a break.